The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
The BVU Beavercast is proudly supported by alum and two-time All-American Monty Mers and High Country Search. Elevate your search at highcountrysearch.com.
Welcome to the Lodge. It's time to settle in for the Buena Vista Wrestling Beavercast. Join host Jason Bryant and head wrestling coach Jeff Breese as we talk all things BV wrestling. Now, on to the show.
Back in the Lodge, episode 28 of the BVU Wrestling Beavercast. Been a while since we've talked with Coach Jeff Breese as we have wrapped up the season. And I'd say a season of disappointment in some respects, a season of positivity in others. Coach Breese didn't qualify anybody to the Division III championships in La Crosse, Wisconsin, but a couple things that came out of the regional tournament we will discuss. But in the time since we've last met before dinner and a show, what's life been like in Storm Lake for you and your Beaver wrestlers?
Things have been busy as usual. I think if you're not busy, you're probably not trying very hard. So a lot of recruits on campus, a lot of phone calls, trip down to NHSCAs, got a chance to meet with Coach Baxter, meet him for the first time when I was down at NHSCAs, and just, getting things geared up for summer camp, getting guys lined up for summer lifting programs, midterms, all kinds of stuff. Just kind of, it seemed, I sat down over the weekend and did not realize it was already April. It shouldn't be April yet. The amount of stuff that's happened in the last 2 to 3 weeks, those 3 weeks have really flown by. So, staying busy, a lot of really positive things happening. Just that matter of patience, because we have another year before we can really kind of harvest some of the things that are happening here.
I'm curious about the interaction there with Coach Baxter, who, for those who don't know, the NHSCA Senior Nationals, which used to be just the Senior Nationals, now has it's exploded to like 900 mats at what used to be called the Virginia Beach Pavilion. Now it's the Virginia Beach Convention Center, and Coach Baxter has retired down to the Chesapeake part of that region. So I'm curious on that interaction with you and Coach Baxter, and say, even now, how much are you reaching out to him for advice?
Well, like I said, I try in the past. I've talked about it. I try and reach out to him at least a couple times a season. When I first got here, it was probably a little bit more often, and then over the last year or so, you just get busy and you don't get a chance to catch up as often as you would like. But we usually talk a couple of times a year at least. And so when we knew we were going to Virginia, we reached out to him and said, hey, would you be able to grab lunch or meet with us somewhere, or whatever. He had kind of a busy schedule. We obviously were busy recruiting the tournament. So he just came to the tournament and actually met up with myself and Coach White. And he always tells this story that he made something crazy like 3,000 or 5,000 calls a year when he was the head coach at BV. And he goes, so I don't own a cell phone. I really don't want to call and talk to anybody else unless I absolutely have to. He goes, so I don't own a cell phone, and my wife won't let me use hers because she's afraid I'm going to lose it. So I'm standing in the middle of the convention center just watching matches, and I knew I was going to meet up with Coach Baxter, but I'd kind of lost track of time. And all of a sudden, I thought I heard my name at the head table, and I'm like, all right, first thought, did we lose any team? Wait, I'm not coaching. We can't lose team points. I can't. And I'm like, that couldn't have been me. There's nobody there's no reason for me to go to the head table. So I ignore it. And then I hear it again. And I'm like, all right, I have to go see what's going on. Maybe I lost my wallet. I don't know why I need to come to the head table. And as soon as I got there, I saw Al standing right at the head table. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it must be noon already. And so that's how he tracked me down. He just came into the convention center and started having my name announced until I realized I was supposed to go up there. So, we met up. We never even got a chance to leave the arena. We just started kind of having a conversation, talking about how things were going, telling stories. And then I felt really bad because we started to get bombarded with recruits that were coming up to talk to us, which obviously is what we're there for. But at the same time, I was trying to talk with Coach Baxter, and so I kept kind of getting pulled in 2 or 3 different directions. He stayed and talked with us for probably 2 hours, and then he had to get on the road and get back home. I think he had some gardening to do and a honey-do list and that kind of thing. But we made plans for next year when we're down there. We're going to set a time and actually go to lunch or go over to the house for dinner, so we can sit down and just spend a little bit more time visiting. And again, not complaining that we had recruits coming up to us. That's what we were there for. But we weren't able to really sit down and really fully be able to take advantage of talking to Coach Baxter because, kind of getting pulled in a couple different directions. But it was great to finally meet him, and I think probably worth the trip to Virginia Beach every year just to see him.
I will say this: if you're looking for a place to eat, I'm from there. I know where the haunts are, but Big Sam's down there on Rudy Inlet, man. It is the place you want to get. It's a crusty old dive next to the marina, and it is worth every just delicious golden fried shrimp. Everything. Oh man, that's where. See, I go back home to Virginia in 2 weeks. That's where I'm going on like a Wednesday or whenever we get back. I'm like, all right, we're going there for lunch. Yes, we're driving the 40 minutes from Poquoson over to Virginia Beach. That's where we're going to eat. So, Coach Baxter, I know you don't have a cell phone, but if you are listening, just take Jeff to Big Sam's next time. So, moving forward, keeping this on the recruiting aspect, you say people are coming up to you. How much has that changed in the last 3 years that said, people are aware of BV and this generation?
I think it's a little different in this generation in that we recruit, I think, far more nationally than back in the BV heyday. But what's starting to change is, and the saying goes, if you're second in recruiting, that doesn't really mean a whole lot. And ultimately it doesn't. If you don't get the kid to decide that BV is the best place for him, ultimately maybe it doesn't mean a whole lot in the immediate future. But kind of nationwide and especially in the Midwest, Iowa, Illinois, we're in the battles that we need to be in for the right kids, for the kids that can really be game changing for us. And so there's some disappointment. Maybe you don't win some of those when you want, but that's no different than any other coach in the country. If you're trying to go after high level kids, it's a lot better when they're picking up the phone and you're in the mix and they're stepping foot on your campus and you're only one or two yeses away from things exploding, opposed to maybe year one when we were calling kids that we didn't really know all that well and they really didn't know us and they were from Iowa and wondering where is Buena Vista? Oh, you're like an hour from us? Yeah, we are. That's kind of how it's really changed over the course of the last couple of years. And we're winning our fair share of those battles, but I think like any good wrestler, we tend to sometimes remember the ones that we don't get too.
When we look at the wrestlers that are on the squad now, and as we said in the open, nobody qualified for the championships this year. Did have 4 wrestlers finish with above 500 records, whereas last year that number was just 2. And when you're looking at the dual meet record and you're looking at no qualifiers, people can just look at this and be like, well, that was a crap season. How do you look at it on the development of the guys that you've been able to bring in, their improvement, the guys that you inherited, and where are the victories here for the program that go beyond a dual meet record and qualifying kids for nationals, at least at this point?
Yeah, I think there's actually a lot if you can take the time and sit back and look at it. And it took me a week or two to be able to sit back and honestly evaluate it. Your heart's broken when you don't get guys through that. Whether they were supposed to or not, nobody walked into that arena with us thinking that we weren't going to get a guy through. We felt like we had done the right things. We were going to be in position. And so if we had to go steal a spot from somebody, we felt like we were ready to do that. So, there is a lot of disappointment in that until you can take a couple of days and sit back and really think about it. And, we had a breakout season with a guy like Shane Vaughn. He was a backup to Brad Kirchhoff all last year, was also injured the vast majority of the year. And so you didn't really get to see what he was fully capable of, even for us as coaches, because he was hampered and really he put off having a surgery all of last season just because we were kind of lean. And, if Brad would have went down, he needed to step up. So he got healthy over the offseason, and he led the team in pins, was about a half a count away from being on the podium at regionals. And we don't really know what happens if he gets in that consolation semi-match. Maybe he's making the trip. I mean, literally one swipe away from the points he needed to move on. So breakout season for him. We had some freshmen that did some good things. Riley Altenberg did a really good job as a freshman at 133, ultimately under 500 record. But you come into the schedule that we wrestle and you have above 500 record as a freshman, you're probably one of the best freshmen in the conference, and I would argue to some extent in the country. He battled really well with some guys at the end of the year that had really beaten him up at the beginning of the year. So he made a lot of strides. And then we had two guys end up getting over the hurdle for Scholar All-American. Only one the previous 2 years. Finally got Ernesto Garcia over the hump there. His grades had never been the issue. It was just win percentage and that kind of thing. And so he finally was able to get over the hump this year and reach that goal. We had 5 guys in the top 8, and 3 of them are returning. Top 8's certainly not the goal, but I'm not going to complain about getting closer either. Each year we're getting closer, and we're getting closer with more and more guys coming back each year. So, there are a lot of positives. Again, I kind of said it earlier. We feel like we're 1 or 2 wins and 1 or 2 yeses away from things really starting to really the tide to really turn, and we go from being near the bottom to being near the top. It's super competitive, and it's not a thing that it's going to be just flipping a switch and it happens. But we're a lot closer every year than we were the year before. We have a lot more guys that we feel like we can lean on to actually get it done. Where maybe year 1, year 2, it was, hey, these are our 1 or 2 guys, and we hope everything works out right for them. We're pretty excited about what we have coming back for next year, and then some of the recruits that I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but that we have coming in as well on top of that.
Yeah, we look at some of the, so you mentioned Vaughn. You also Garcia, who went from a 13-19 mark to 17-12, found himself in the semifinals against a returning finalist in CJ Pistano, and that one was 8-1. But when you're sitting there as a coach and you got one guy through your first year with Nasheed Barrow, now he's not with the team anymore, and you're sitting there in the chair and you're like, okay, didn't get anybody last year. What are the nerves like for you when Garcia's there in the semis against Pistano? Like, okay, this is the one that could determine does he go, and then when you have to do that again with consolation semifinals, I mean, it's got to be nerve wracking to know that you can't wrestle this match for these guys.
I guess in that sense it is pretty nerve wracking that I can't do anything about it. I think it's a bigger. I'm probably more nervous for them at that point. I'm probably more nervous for how we're progressing all the way through the year as a coach. It's a little bit more focused on what am I doing? How do we get these guys where we need them to be? Once we get to regionals, and I know they've put themselves in that position to, one more match gets them through. I'm really more nervous for them than I am nervous in their capabilities. I want so badly for them to experience that. And so I'm probably crazier than any time the entire year at regionals. I'm trying to work on being the calm one of the group for the guys, but I know what they've put in, and this is really no different than a lot of coaches, I guess, but I know what they've put in. I know what they're capable of. I'm not nervous that they can do it. I want so bad for them to feel that feeling. It's really not about me at that point. I want them to kind of have that weight lifted off their shoulders of a goal that they've had their entire lives to start to come true.
As we look at certain goals that these guys have had, Andrew Nelson, 19-15 to 12-21. What was the key to his improvement this year?
Part of it was he actually started to believe. I think he was a kid that has had a fair amount of ability even from day one when we got here, but he didn't believe enough in himself, and he hadn't quite developed the chain wrestling ability. So when something went wrong, that he could just come right back and get himself back into a match. And so because of that, he was spent most of his sophomore and junior year, he wouldn't pull the trigger on a shot because there was well, what if it doesn't work and what if I'm on bottom? And he started to get off the bottom pretty easily this year. Not on everyone, but on the vast majority of people, which gave him the confidence to open up. He had some really good offense. Ultimately, he needed to be a better scrambler. Some guys have that, some guys don't. He lost some matches in scramble positions that he wasn't comfortable in. That, if maybe we could have got him over the hump to shoot a little bit earlier in his career, that maybe he would have been in a few more of those and would have been more comfortable come his senior year. But he had come so far that it's really hard to be upset that he didn't get to that scramble level. You can look back on it and it's easy to diagnose, but he had made leaps and bounds in the last 2 years to even put himself in that position. And that's what it came down to. Ultimately, a little bit of scrambling and match awareness probably would have made the difference. But I mean, the kid he committed himself to it, to his mind that it was going to happen this year. And so he fell a little bit short, but that was the reason for the leap. It was that he finally believed it was going to happen. Probably could have put himself in that position a year earlier.
When we look at the timelines at the end of year 3, where are you in checking off the boxes that you wanted to check off by this point, and what still needs to be done in order to check those other boxes?
I think in a lot of ways we're probably where we're supposed to be. We always want to be further ahead than we are. I think year 1 in some ways was a bit of an anomaly, and we hope that doesn't stay that way. But we were probably further ahead in year 1 than we should have been on paper. Having a guy all the way in the round of 12, and again, he was seconds away from being in a similar position again as a sophomore. But to have a guy in the round of 12, and then to have a handful of really good seniors that also qualified, we were probably a little bit further ahead than we should have been in year 1. And then in year 2, we kind of hit the reset button, and that the number of seniors dropped off dramatically. And so we were trying to be one of the best teams in the country with a whole bunch of freshmen and a whole bunch of sophomores. And that's not going to change a whole lot next year, except for we're trying to do it with a whole bunch of juniors and a whole bunch of sophomores. And so, we're going to have one senior on the team next year. We don't have a really old, experienced group. The mentality needs to change that you're not supposed to wait around and try and get it done as a senior. You got to start to try and make it happen as a sophomore, as a junior. Give yourself as many opportunities as you possibly can. And we feel like we have some guys that are really, really bought in and believe in that. I keep coming back to it. It sounds simple, but it's a couple of kids on the recruiting trail saying yes, and a couple of kids next February that say, I'm not going to lose this match. There's no way that I'm taking 5th. There's no way that I'm going to take 4th. There's no way I'm losing this semifinal match. Whether they're supposed to win it or not, one match changes pretty much everything for us right now. And then there's a snowball effect. I've seen it multiple places. The snowball effect, once you have that one kid that breaks through and you have 9 other guys that can see it, and maybe that happens in the same day. Sometimes it's 3 guys that break through. Because you never know for 100% what's going to happen in those crazy rounds at regionals. I watched a team have 10 guys place and only get 1 to nationals, and I saw a team that came out of nowhere and all of a sudden won 3-4 matches and jumped up and had a bunch of guys going to the national tournament. It's a crazy thing about our sport. About an hour and a half settles a lot, but it's not a clear picture of how close you really are to.
Now, when it comes to off-season improvements, there are obviously limitations within Division III on how much interaction and how much, quote-unquote practice time can be had. But where are the off-season gains going to be made with this group of kids that are coming back next year?
I think the off-season gains will really be made with guys that decide they're going to put in the work through the summer. And what is kind of different from when I first got here till now is I have freshmen that are in hounding me about what's going to go on this summer. What can I do? How can we make this happen? Where I was in years previous trying to convince juniors and seniors, hey, there's a lot of work that can be done over the summer. Let's work together and get a plan put in place for you. Now, I'm limited as far as what I can do and how much I can be involved and where and when and all of that stuff. But there are certainly ways to get things done. And so we have those type of kids that are coming and asking those questions early, freshmen and sophomores that are hungry to do it, not guys that are like, I'm going to get it done later. I'm going to have fun this summer. I'm going to go do whatever. They're hungry to get it done now. And that usually translates into results, even if it's, even if for some guys it doesn't mean that they're on the podium next year, it translates into a different level of success.
With those levels of success, how many kids have expressed interest in saying, "Hey, coach, I want to wrestle at University Nationals. I want to look at the UWW Juniors in Vegas." I mean, looking at that freestyling Greco-Roman offseason.
I think we have 4 guys that are actively pursuing University Nationals right now. They wanted to go to FILAs, or they're all FILAs, I guess, but they wanted to go to UWW Juniors, and it's just bad timing for us and our academic calendar. Kind of talked them off the ledge on that a little bit. Honestly, might be the better event for us competitively. But for us, it's, those guys are trying to get matches. They're trying to find ways to improve. And I think going and seeing, a different level of competition that we see in the summer could be eye-opening for some of them. So they're looking to go out to universities in Ohio. We also have some cadets through our club that are planning on going out to UWW cadets that same weekend. So it's a great thing to see that they're just hungry to compete, and they're not afraid of who they're going to see or that kind of thing. We're not expecting these guys to necessarily go make the university world team. Be pretty cool if it happened, but I mean, that's not really the expectation that we're going to make the university world team. It's that they're hungry to compete through the summer. So that's something that's, really encouraging and something that we've talked about since day one here, that we want that to be part of our program. Guys wanting to compete throughout the year because they love the sport, not just because coach said you should do some stuff in the summer.
What adjustments are you and Coach White going to potentially make to whether it be your timelines, coaching philosophy, scheduling philosophy? I mean, how much are you guys going to sit there and be like, okay, what can we tweak to just make our guys that much better next year?
Well, I mean, we sit down multiple times from the end of the season all the way up until we start in October with official practice. And, everything's always on the table to some degree. But we feel like our schedule is actually really good. We make a couple small changes every year based on either budget or finals week or, things like that maybe we can't make the exact same schedule year after year, but it's pretty darn close. So we really like our schedule. We haven't changed a whole lot with that, but we are going to move a couple dates around just based on some back-to-back competitions that we didn't really like how it fell last year. But for the most part, really not a lot of big changes in the schedule. And the timeline doesn't change a whole lot as far as, how we get guys into practice and what we're going to teach and when. What really starts to change is what we can build on from one year to the next. This year we had a team that was comprised of, I don't know, 85% freshmen, something like that, 75% freshmen. So we can teach in a different way this upcoming year with more returning guys that have been through our system, understand the basic skills that we want to work on. We can continue to hammer that stuff home, but we can really build on top of that. So we become a team that can really actually chain wrestle some things together, and we feel more comfortable in a lot more positions. I think that's something that's really been missing. It's just, we're good at one thing, but what happens when that dynamic changes and that flow from one position to another? has been something that has been a problem for us. But I think that comes with some level of maturity, some level of understanding your basic positions and where you want to go through or go to from there. So, everything's always on the table. We're always thinking and looking to tweak things, but wholesale change, I think that's not something that we're really looking to do. I think we have a solid system. Again, we get tired of hearing it to some degree, but we keep hearing from other coaches that we're making ground. And part of that is them being nice and being good sports, and that's awesome of them. But there's also some truth to that. They can see the progress that we make year after year. So we don't feel like we need to change a lot in how we train and what we're teaching. It's really letting these kids be a little bit older and develop and adding on. So there's, we talk a lot about there being holes in our game or holes in our position. So we fill a lot of those holes each year. Training-wise, that's kind of where we're at. We're going to attack some things a little bit differently recruiting-wise this year. We attacked things a little bit differently recruiting-wise this past year as well. I think that just comes with numbers being built into the program and more awareness. We have more access to kids that, maybe in previous years we didn't have that type of access to. They weren't receptive to it. So we're able to recruit a little bit differently, but ultimately it's still the same hustle and grind that every other coach in the country is experiencing. We just got to be better at selling our vision than some other people, or we need to be a little bit better at making sure that this place is the right place for that kid. That's it, and that's certainly a two-way street. But we're really, we talked a lot about it after the season, and it's easy when you're not getting what you want to just say blow the whole thing up. It didn't work. But we don't think that's the right move. It's each year we are seeing progress. As impatient as we are for the giant boom where we get over the other side of the mountain and things just start to happen, it hasn't happened yet. But we don't really believe that it's because of us doing anything wrong. We can make incremental improvements to what we're doing, but we have a system in place that's working. It's just that we're super impatient, and we're getting guys that are starting to be super impatient right along with us, and that may be the biggest factor.
Two things that are impactful to the program that may not have direct impact to your role as the head coach. One of them actually kind of does. The other one doesn't. The first, new president there at the school has a wrestling background, so you got to be somewhat excited about that.
Absolutely. It's always nice when, and it was in the heart of the season when he was doing his on-campus interview. It's nice when the new president, before he's even the new president, asks where the wrestling coach is when he's here for his interview. That's a good sign, it seems like. So, we've talked a lot about his son. I haven't actually gotten a chance to meet his son yet, but I think once his son steps foot on campus, we may already have a built-in manager, probably a number one fan, and also someone that we can work with through our club. And it's nice to have that connection to someone. They're going to live right next door to us, so we're going to have a lot of access to hopefully make him a stud down the road here in Iowa high school. That'd be a cool thing. So, really, really nice that we're starting to surround ourselves, and certainly by no means are these wrestling only people. These are people that are really trying to push the university forward as a whole. But it's really nice to start surrounding yourself with president and an athletic director that they understand the sport, they understand some of the difficulties of it and the hurdles that you may need to jump through. So we consider ourselves really fortunate to have that, and I feel like we were going to be supported no matter what, but it's great to have support and maybe someone that you can go have a conversation with and vent from time to time, and they know exactly what you're talking about.
And lastly, we're going to shift gears a little bit to the Division I world, but this does impact a BV alum, a man named Dan Dresser, who was the first national finalist in school history back in 1986. It is the brother of new Iowa State head wrestling coach Kevin Dresser, and he's going to be taking a role with the Cyclone Regional Training Center. When that's part of the news about BV, but part of the news about being an Iowa wrestling fan or coach. I mean, Kevin Dresser's got the new staff, but now they're all Hawkeyes. It's Mike Zadek, it's Derek St. John, it's Brent Metcalf. From just a strict wrestling standpoint, when you heard about this, what was your reaction?
Once I saw who the staff was going to be, I really thought about trying to figure out when that duel is going to be. So maybe I can go get some tickets. As a East Coast guy, born and raised, I usually try to fight how big of a deal Iowa State is, just because I didn't grow up with it. And so I guess maybe just to stir some things up with people around me, I try to downplay it. There's no way to downplay that anymore. That's going to be it's going to be an awesome duel, even if it's not super competitive year one. Those recruiting battles are going to be very interesting. Those dual meets are going to be very interesting. There's going to be no shortage of passion between those two. How BV as a school fits into all of that, I don't know. When the landscape changes within your state, sometimes that could be a good thing. Sometimes that could be a bad thing. But I think it's certainly going to be some interesting times, and it's added a whole lot of excitement here the last couple of weeks.
Pretty cool to have a BV alum in the mix there too, right?
Absolutely. I actually did not know. I've talked to Dan several times since Kevin had been hired. Just quick text message here, congratulations, or hey, how's everything going? Good to have your brother back in town. Stuff like that. I had no idea he was actually going to be part of the Cyclone Regional Training Center. So I was somewhat in jest, but also kind of curious, because that's something that we would like to start to build with BV on obviously a smaller scale. But to really expand what we can do with our regional training center. I was kind of picking his brain about some things, but I also saw director of Cyclone Regional Training Center, and I was like, what does that job description entail? It's like, did you know somebody? How did you get this job? So, it's been pretty cool. I think it could be an interesting or a good in an interesting way relationship for us to have Dan so closely connected to the Iowa State program. Kevin's someone that I've probably known better than like Tom and Terry over at Iowa, just because I work so closely. Mostly against, but so close to Kevin for those couple of years when we were in the ACC. He's someone that I've kind of been able to kind of follow what he did and steal some ideas from. So to have that connection a little bit deeper now, I think could maybe be a good thing. They certainly have a bigger job than trying to help BVU get better. But it's nice to have that type of connection and relationship down the road names as well.
Well, Coach, we'll just wrap up this episode here as we're getting to the off season. We're going to have some chats, of course, about what's going on the landscape in Iowa here in the off season. But we'll have Dan Dresser on the show in an upcoming episode. We'll also work to have the new president on board. So for Jeff Breese, this is Jason Bryant. We'll see you back in the lodge here sometime soon. Enjoy the spring and the summer, folks.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.